No healer in the entire kingdom was willing to open that door. Until a new Omega girl arrived and stepped forward without fear. The word spread through Silvermoon Wolf Kingdom like a quiet storm. Behind the ancient doors of the royal chamber, the Alpha King waited in silence, and every healer who had entered before had walked away without an answer. Amelia Carter heard the warnings on her very first day inside the palace. Do not approach the Alpha King. Do not attempt what others have failed to do. Do not believe you can change something that has existed for generations. She was a new healer in a world where reputation meant everything, and she had none. No powerful family. No royal connections. No legendary achievements. Just a white healer robe, a small collection of healing tools, and a heart that refused to ignore someone in need. As Amelia walked through the grand halls of Silvermoon Castle, she noticed the way people looked at her. Some saw an inexperienced Omega who did not belong among the kingdom's most skilled healers. Others saw someone who was too gentle for a world that valued strength above compassion. But Amelia had always believed that healing was not about proving how powerful you were. It was about remembering why you chose to help in the first place. That evening, as the moonlight covered the castle towers, Amelia carried fresh healing supplies through the quiet corridors. She was only following her assignment. Deliver the materials. Return to the healer's quarters. Stay away from the forbidden chamber. But then she heard something that made her stop. Not a command. Not anger. Just a quiet presence behind the closed doors. A loneliness that felt impossible to ignore. Amelia looked at the door marked with the royal symbol of the Alpha King. She remembered every warning she had received. She remembered the stories that said no healer could reach him. She remembered that she was only a new Omega girl who had just arrived. For a moment, doubt filled her mind. Maybe everyone else was right. Maybe some things were not meant to be changed. But then she thought about the reason she became a healer. A person should never be abandoned simply because helping them is difficult. Slowly, Amelia reached for the handle. Her hand trembled, but she did not step back. When the door opened, she expected to see the powerful ruler everyone feared. Instead, she saw a man carrying a burden hidden beneath his crown. Alexander Blackwood, the Alpha King of Silvermoon, stood in the quiet chamber surrounded by ancient symbols and forgotten secrets. His reputation had made him seem untouchable, but in that moment Amelia saw something different. She saw someone who needed understanding. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the entire world seemed to become silent. Alexander looked surprised, not because another healer had entered, but because this young Omega was the first person who looked at him without fear or expectation. Amelia did not know what waited beyond that door. She did not know that her choice would challenge centuries of tradition. She only knew one thing. Someone needed help, and she was not going to walk away. The silence inside the Alpha King's chamber felt different from what Amelia expected. She had prepared herself to meet a ruler surrounded by power, someone impossible to approach and impossible to understand. But the man standing before her was not the legend she had heard about in the palace halls. Alexander Blackwood was still the Alpha King of Silvermoon Wolf Kingdom, but beneath the crown was someone who had spent far too long carrying a burden alone. Amelia stood near the entrance, holding her healer's bag carefully as she tried to understand the moment. She was aware of every rule she had broken simply by being there. Yet she could not bring herself to regret it. Alexander watched her quietly, his silver eyes filled with curiosity. "You know you are not supposed to be here," he said. His voice was calm, not angry. Amelia lowered her gaze for a moment. "Yes, Your Majesty. I know." "Then why did you come?" The question was simple, but Amelia felt there was something deeper behind it. She looked at him and answered honestly, "Because I heard someone needed help." Those words surprised him. Throughout his life, people approached him because of his title. They wanted protection, influence, or approval from the Alpha King. Very few people ever approached him simply because they cared. Amelia did not ask for anything. She did not try to impress him. She only saw someone who needed a healer. "You are a new member of the Royal Healing Order," Alexander said. "You have no experience with this condition." Amelia nodded. "That is true. Then why believe you can succeed where others could not?" Amelia looked around the chamber. Ancient symbols covered the walls, and old records rested on shelves that had not been touched in years. She noticed something others had overlooked. Maybe the problem is not that no one was strong enough, she said softly. Maybe they were searching for the wrong answer. Alexander became quiet. It was not the response he expected. Most healers had arrived with complicated methods and countless theories. Amelia arrived with a question. She wanted to understand before she tried to change anything. The next morning, Amelia returned to the Royal Healing Order. She expected criticism and she received it. The senior healers questioned why she entered the Alpha King's chamber. They reminded her that tradition existed for a reason. Amelia listened respectfully, but she remained certain about one thing. Helping someone should never be considered a mistake. As the day continued, rumors moved through the palace. The new Omega healer had entered the place where no one else dared to go. Some believed she was reckless. Some believed she was simply inexperienced. But Alexander saw something different. He remembered the way she looked at him. Not as a ruler. Not as a symbol. As a person. Later that evening, Alexander requested Amelia's presence again. When she entered the chamber, she noticed something had changed. The distance between them was smaller. The walls around him seemed less impossible to reach. The others believe you made a mistake, Alexander said. Amelia looked down briefly. Maybe they are right. He seemed surprised by her answer. Then she continued. But if helping someone is a mistake, I would rather make that mistake than choose to do nothing. For the first time in years, Alexander felt a quiet sense of hope. The new Omega healer had not arrived at the palace to chase glory. She had arrived with something far more rare. A heart that refused to give up on someone others had already forgotten. The morning light entered the halls of Silvermoon Castle, but the atmosphere inside the Royal Healing Order felt colder than ever. Amelia Carter could feel the questions following her with every step. The other healers watched quietly as she prepared her supplies, wondering how a new Omega healer could enter the Alpha King's chamber when so many experienced healers had refused. Amelia understood their doubts. She was not famous. She had not studied under the most respected masters in the kingdom. She had no powerful family name to protect her. But she also knew something they had forgotten. Healing was never only about knowledge. It was about seeing the person behind the problem. As Amelia organized the ancient herbs in the healing hall, a senior healer approached her. "You are young, Amelia," he said calmly. "Your intentions may be kind, but kindness alone cannot solve every mystery." Amelia looked at him with respect. "I understand that. Then why continue searching for an answer?" he asked. "Because someone has to," she replied. Her answer was simple, but it carried a quiet confidence. Later that afternoon, Amelia was summoned to the royal library. When she arrived, she found Alexander standing among shelves filled with ancient records from previous generations of Alpha Kings. The room was different from his chamber. It felt less like a place of authority, and more like a place where forgotten stories waited to be discovered. "I need your help understanding something," Alexander said. Amelia looked surprised. She had expected him to ask about healing methods, not history. He guided her toward a collection of old books covered in dust. "Every healer before you searched for a way to fix what they believed was wrong," Alexander explained. "But none of them asked why it happened." Amelia carefully opened one of the books. The pages contained descriptions of ancient healers who worked alongside the Alpha bloodline. Their methods were not based only on knowledge. They focused on balance, trust, and understanding. As Amelia read, she noticed a symbol repeated throughout the records. A symbol that looked strangely familiar. "Where have you seen this before?" Alexander asked. Amelia thought carefully. Then she remembered the markings inside his chamber. "They are connected," she whispered. Alexander looked at her with surprise. For years, many scholars had studied those symbols, but no one had discovered their meaning. Yet Amelia recognized a connection almost immediately. Not because she was more powerful than others, because she paid attention to details everyone else ignored. Together, they continued searching through the ancient texts. Hours passed as they uncovered stories of healers who had disappeared from history. One passage caught Amelia's attention. It described a healer who would appear when the Alpha bloodline faced a forgotten challenge. The healer would not be chosen because of status or strength, but because of compassion. Amelia slowly closed the book. She did not want to believe the words were about her. She had never dreamed of being important. She only wanted to help people. But Alexander noticed the uncertainty in her eyes. "You think you are ordinary," he said. Amelia looked at him. "I am." Alexander shook his head slightly. "Maybe you have spent so long believing that you never notice what makes you different." For a moment Amelia had no answer. The Alpha King who everyone feared was the first person who made her question the way she saw herself. And as the ancient records revealed more secrets, both of them began to understand that her arrival at the palace was not a coincidence. Something had been waiting for her long before she ever walked through those doors. The ancient records inside the royal library revealed a truth that neither Amelia Carter nor Alexander Blackwood expected. For generations, the kingdom had searched for answers hidden within those forgotten pages, but no one had noticed the connection until a young Omega healer opened the book with a different kind of vision. She was not searching for power. She was searching for understanding. As the days passed, Amelia continued studying the ancient texts with Alexander by her side. The Alpha King, who had once kept everyone at a distance, found himself spending more time in the quiet library than in the grand halls of the palace. He began to notice the small things about Amelia that others overlooked. The way she carefully restored damaged pages. The way she listened before speaking. The way she treated every person in the castle with the same kindness, regardless of their position. But the more Amelia learned, the more questions appeared. The ancient records spoke of a healer connected to the Alpha bloodline, but they did not explain why that connection existed. They only mentioned that the healer would appear when the kingdom needed balance the most. One evening, while examining another forgotten manuscript, Amelia discovered a passage written in a different style from the others. The words were faded, but their meaning was clear. A true healer does not remove what is hidden. A true healer reveals what has always been there. Amelia read the sentence several times. She felt that the words carried a deeper message, but she did not understand why they affected her so strongly. Alexander noticed her expression. "You believe this is connected to you," he said. Amelia looked away. "I do not know. I have never been someone people expected great things from." Her voice was quiet. "Most of my life, I was reminded that I was only an Omega." Alexander studied her carefully. He knew what it felt like to be defined by one thing. Everyone saw him as the Alpha King. Few people ever wondered who he was beyond that title. "Perhaps that is why you were able to see what others missed," he said. Amelia looked at him surprised. "Because I was underestimated?" Alexander nodded. "Because you know what it feels like to be unseen." Those words stayed with her. For the first time, Amelia realized that the experiences she once considered weaknesses had shaped the way she understood others. Her compassion was not something she needed to hide. It was the reason she could reach people others could not. That night, Amelia returned to the Alpha King's chamber to continue her research. As she approached the ancient symbols carved into the walls, something unexpected happened. The markings began to glow softly beneath her hand. Amelia stepped back in surprise. She had not spoken any words or performed any healing ritual. The symbols simply responded to her presence. Alexander entered moments later and stopped when he saw the light. His expression changed completely. "That has not happened in hundreds of years," he whispered. Amelia looked at him, confused and uncertain. "What does it mean?" Alexander slowly approached the ancient markings. "I think it means the answer was never lost." He looked toward her. It was waiting. Neither of them knew what the discovery would bring, but in that moment they understood one thing. Amelia was not simply a new healer who had arrived at the palace by chance. She was connected to a forgotten truth that could change everything they believed about the Alpha bloodline, the healing order, and the future of the kingdom. The ancient symbols continued to glow softly beneath Amelia Carter's hand, revealing a connection that had been hidden for generations. Inside the Alpha King's chamber, the quiet light reflected across the stone walls as both Amelia and Alexander Blackwood stood in complete silence, trying to understand what they had witnessed. For centuries, scholars and healers had studied those markings, searching for their meaning. Yet none of them had ever awakened the forgotten symbols. Until now, Amelia slowly stepped back, still unable to believe what had happened. "I did not do anything," she whispered. Alexander looked at her with a thoughtful expression. Maybe that is exactly why it happened. His words stayed with her. Amelia had always believed her ability was simple. She could heal, she could comfort, and she could sense when someone was struggling. She never considered herself extraordinary, but the ancient records suggested something different. The following morning, Alexander invited Amelia to explore the oldest section of the royal archives. Hidden beneath the palace were records that had not been opened in decades. Together, they searched through forgotten writings about the first Alpha rulers and the healers who stood beside them. Amelia carefully turned each page, noticing a repeated symbol that matched the one inside Alexander's chamber. The records described a rare connection between an Alpha king and a healer who could understand what others could not see. But the most surprising part was not the existence of the connection. It was the reason behind it. The healer was never chosen because of status, family, or reputation. The healer was chosen because of the heart they carried. Amelia paused when she read those words. She thought about all the times people had underestimated her. She remembered being told that an Omega could never hold a position of importance in the royal healing order. She remembered watching others receive recognition while she remained unnoticed. But now, the very qualities people dismissed were becoming the reason she was needed. Alexander noticed the change in her expression. "You have spent a long time believing you were not enough," he said. Amelia looked at him quietly. "Maybe because I was always reminded of what I was not." Alexander understood that feeling more than anyone. The entire kingdom saw him as the Alpha King, a symbol of strength and leadership. Few people ever wondered what it was like to carry that responsibility every day. "People often judge what they do not understand," he said. "But that does not make their judgment true." Their conversation was interrupted when a message arrived from the royal council. They had learned about the awakened symbols, and they demanded answers. Amelia felt the familiar uncertainty return. She knew many people would question her. She knew some would believe she had stepped beyond her place. But this time something was different. She was no longer standing alone. When Amelia and Alexander entered the council chamber, every eye turned toward them. The elders studied the young Omega healer with suspicion. They wanted explanations. They wanted proof. But before anyone could question her, Alexander stepped forward. "The symbols responded to her because she is connected to a truth this kingdom forgot," he said. The room became silent. For the first time, the council was forced to consider something they had refused to see. Amelia was not simply a new healer who arrived at the palace. She was someone who carried a forgotten legacy. And as the ancient secret began to awaken, the kingdom slowly realized that the Omega they underestimated might be the very person who could restore what had been lost. The council chamber remained silent after Alexander Blackwood spoke. The elders of Silvermoon Wolf Kingdom had spent generations believing they understood the balance between Alpha rulers and healers, but the young Omega standing before them had revealed something they could not explain. Amelia Carter felt every gaze in the room. Some carried curiosity, others carried doubt. She had faced judgment before, but this time felt different. The questions were no longer about whether she belonged in the healing order. They were about whether she had become connected to a secret that could change the kingdom's future. "An ancient symbol reacting to someone does not prove destiny," one elder said. "It only proves that something unusual occurred." Amelia listened carefully. She understood their caution. A kingdom could not be guided by emotion alone. But she also knew that refusing to explore the truth would only keep them trapped in the same place for generations. "Then let us search for the answer," she said calmly. "If the records are wrong, we will discover that together. But if they are right, we should not ignore them because the truth feels unfamiliar." Her response surprised the council. They expected fear from a young Omega. They expected hesitation. Instead, they saw someone willing to face uncertainty with patience. After the meeting, Amelia returned to the ancient library with Alexander. The tension from the council chamber followed them, but neither spoke about it at first. They both understood that something had changed. Before Amelia arrived, Alexander had faced his struggles alone. Before Alexander entered her life, Amelia had accepted that others would always underestimate her. Now they were both beginning to see themselves differently. "You handled the council well," Alexander said as they walked between the old bookshelves. Amelia smiled slightly. "I was nervous." You did not look nervous. She looked at him with a quiet expression. Sometimes courage is just moving forward while you are afraid. Alexander remembered those words. He had heard many speeches about strength, but Amelia described it in a way he had never considered. The strongest people were not always the ones who felt no fear. They were the ones who chose what was right despite it. As they continued researching, Amelia discovered another passage hidden beneath the ancient writings. It described the connection between the healer and the alpha as something built through trust rather than power. The healer was not meant to control the alpha's strength. The healer was meant to bring balance. Alexander read the passage carefully. For years, he had believed his role required him to stand above everyone else. But Amelia showed him that leadership was not about standing alone. It was about knowing when to allow others beside you. That evening, the palace changed. The servants who once whispered about Amelia began treating her with more respect. They had seen her patience. They had seen her courage. They had seen that she was not searching for attention or influence. She was simply following her purpose. But not everyone accepted the change. Deep within the council, some still believed the old traditions were more important than the new truth appearing before them. They planned to challenge Amelia's place in the palace. They believed an Omega healer should never have the ability to influence the future of the Alpha King. Amelia did not know what awaited her. Alexander did not know how far the opposition would go. But both of them understood one thing. The connection between them was no longer just a mystery from an ancient book. It had become a choice they would have to defend together. The quiet tension inside Silvermoon Wolf Kingdom grew stronger with each passing day. The ancient records had awakened, the forgotten symbols had responded to Amelia Carter, and now the entire kingdom wanted answers. But while many people began to respect the young Omega healer, others feared what her presence represented. For generations, the kingdom had followed a simple belief. Power belonged to those who had earned the right to hold it. An Omega healer standing beside the Alpha King challenged everything they understood. Amelia felt the change around her. The whispers in the halls became louder. The respectful greetings became fewer. Yet she continued her work as she always had. She prepared healing remedies, studied ancient texts, and helped anyone who came to her, regardless of their position. She refused to become bitter because others did not understand her. Alexander Blackwood noticed that strength in her more than anything else. "You know they are questioning you," he said one evening as they walked through the palace gardens. Amelia looked at the flowers beside the path. "I know. And you are not angry?" Alexander asked. She paused before answering. "I was hurt at first. But anger will not help me understand them." Alexander looked at her with quiet admiration. He had spent years dealing with challenges through authority and responsibility. Amelia approached challenges differently. She searched for understanding before judgment. Before he could respond, a royal announcement called them back to the palace. The council had requested another meeting. This time they wanted a decision about Amelia's future within the kingdom. Inside the grand chamber, the elders stood before them with serious expressions. "The traditions of this kingdom cannot be changed because of one unusual event," one elder said. "The connection you discovered may be important, but we cannot allow uncertainty to guide our decisions." Amelia listened quietly. She understood their concern. Change was never easy, especially for those who had spent their entire lives protecting old beliefs. But she also knew that tradition without compassion could become a reason to ignore the truth. "I am not asking anyone to believe in me without proof," Amelia said. "I am asking for the chance to discover the truth." Her words created a moment of silence. The council had expected her to defend herself emotionally. Instead, she offered patience. Alexander stepped forward after her. The room immediately became still. "For years, this kingdom believed strength was the only answer," he said. "But the ancient records tell us something different." He looked toward Amelia. "They tell us that balance comes from understanding." The elders exchanged uncertain glances. The Alpha King had always been respected for his authority, but today they saw something different. They saw a ruler willing to question what had always been accepted. After the meeting, Amelia walked through the palace halls beside Alexander. She knew the council had not fully accepted her. The doubts were still there. The old beliefs were still strong. But something important had changed. She was no longer facing them alone. "You did not have to defend me," Amelia said softly. Alexander looked toward her. "I was not defending you because you are an Omega." He paused. "I was defending you because you were right." Those words meant more to Amelia than any title or recognition. She had spent years believing she needed to prove her worth to others. Now she was beginning to understand that her value had never depended on their approval. But as the moon rose above Silvermoon Castle, a new challenge was approaching. The council was not ready to accept the truth, and the ancient records still held secrets that had not been revealed. The bond between the Omega Healer and the Alpha King was growing stronger, but their greatest test had only begun. The days following the council meeting revealed something unexpected about Silvermoon Wolf Kingdom. The people were no longer only watching Amelia Carter because she was different. They were watching because they were beginning to understand her. The young Omega Healer who arrived without a reputation had shown something the kingdom had forgotten for generations. True strength did not always announce itself with power. Sometimes it appeared quietly through kindness, patience, and the courage to do what was right. But inside the palace walls, not everyone was ready to accept that change. The elders continued searching through the ancient records, hoping to find another explanation for the connection between Amelia and the Alpha bloodline. They wanted certainty before allowing old traditions to change. Amelia understood their hesitation, but she also knew that fear could not be the reason they ignored the truth. One evening, Alexander Blackwood found Amelia in the royal library surrounded by open books and handwritten records. She looked tired, but her determination remained unchanged. "You have been here for hours," Alexander said gently. Amelia smiled slightly. "There are still so many questions." Alexander looked at the countless pages around her. "And you believe you can find all the answers?" Amelia closed one of the books. "No. But I believe every answer begins with someone willing to search." Alexander remembered the person Amelia was when she first entered the palace. A young Omega who believed she had no importance in a world ruled by powerful people. Yet now she stood among ancient records that even the greatest scholars had failed to understand. The next day, the kingdom gathered in the grand courtyard. The council had requested a final demonstration of the ancient connection. They wanted to know if Amelia truly carried the healing legacy described in the forgotten texts. Amelia stood beneath the open sky, feeling the weight of every person watching her. For a moment, she remembered all the times she had been told she was not enough. But this time she did not feel small. She was not standing there to prove she was better than anyone else. She was standing there because she believed in the purpose she had followed her entire life. As Amelia approached the ancient symbol carved into the royal stone, a soft light appeared once again. The crowd became silent. The symbol did not respond to force. It responded to her calm presence and genuine intention. The elders watched carefully as the truth became impossible to ignore. Alexander stepped beside her, not as a ruler demanding acceptance, but as someone supporting the person who had changed his life. "The kingdom has spent years searching for a stronger healer," Alexander said. "But perhaps we were searching for the wrong thing." His voice carried across the courtyard. "Perhaps we needed someone who remembered that every person deserves compassion." Amelia looked toward him, surprised by his words. She had never expected the Alpha King to see her that way. She had only wanted to help him. But Alexander knew the truth. Amelia had not simply helped him understand his hidden struggle. She had reminded him what kind of ruler he wanted to become. As the gathering ended, the people of Silvermoon began to see Amelia differently. The Omega Healer they once underestimated had become someone they respected. Yet the greatest change was not how others saw her. It was how she finally saw herself. She no longer believed she needed permission to belong. She understood that her kindness was not something that made her weak. It was the very thing that gave her strength. But as the moon rose above the kingdom that night, one final secret remained hidden within the ancient records. A secret that would reveal why Amelia and Alexander had been connected long before they ever met. The final secret hidden within the ancient records was not about power. It was about purpose. Deep beneath Silvermoon Castle, Amelia Carter and Alexander Blackwood stood together inside the forgotten archive where the oldest stories of the kingdom had been preserved. The last pages of the ancient text revealed what generations before them had misunderstood. The connection between an Omega Healer, And an alpha king was never created through strength or status. It was created through balance, trust, and the courage to see beyond appearances. Amelia slowly turned the final page, her eyes moving across the words written by a healer from centuries ago. The message was simple. The greatest healer is not the one who changes another person. The greatest healer is the one who helps someone remember who they truly are. Amelia felt a quiet emotion rise within her. She thought about the young woman who first arrived at the palace believing she had nothing special to offer. She remembered every moment when others underestimated her because she was an Omega. But now she understood. The qualities people overlooked were the very reasons she had been chosen. Alexander watched her silently. The Alpha King who once believed he had to carry every responsibility alone, had discovered something equally important. A true leader did not stand above everyone else. A true leader understood the value of those who stood beside him. "You changed this kingdom," Alexander said. Amelia looked at him and smiled softly. "I did not change anything alone." She looked around the ancient room filled with forgotten knowledge. Everyone here chose to see the truth when they were ready. Alexander admired that answer. Even after everything she had accomplished, Amelia never searched for praise. She never wanted a crown or a title. She only wanted people to be treated with kindness. When they returned to the palace courtyard, the entire kingdom gathered beneath the silver moonlight. The people of Silver Moon Wolf Kingdom looked toward the two figures standing together. The Alpha King who once seemed unreachable. The Omega Healer who was once ignored. They represented something the kingdom had forgotten. A person's worth was never decided by where they came from, or how others viewed them. It was revealed through the choices they made. Alexander stepped forward and addressed his people. He spoke not about victory or authority but about understanding. He reminded everyone that traditions existed to protect the kingdom, not to prevent it from growing. He honored Amelia not because she possessed a rare ability, but because she had shown the courage to care when others turned away. Amelia listened as the people accepted her with new respect. Yet the most meaningful moment was not the recognition from the kingdom. It was the realization inside herself. She no longer saw herself as the Omega who needed to prove her place. She saw herself as the healer she had always been, someone who brought hope where others saw uncertainty. As the night continued, Amelia and Alexander stood overlooking the kingdom they had helped transform. Their journey had begun with a simple choice. One person decided not to walk away from someone who needed help. That choice opened the door to forgotten truths, restored trust, and changed the future of an entire kingdom. And from that day forward, Silver Moon remembered a lesson that would never be forgotten. The greatest strength was not found in power alone. It was found in the courage to understand, the kindness to help, and the heart willing to believe that even the most hidden souls could be healed.